Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Alexis Williams, co-founder of Business Skills for Health Professionals, and welcome to the Beyond Clinical podcast. In this podcast, I'll be interviewing health professionals from diverse backgrounds who've moved into unconventional roles outside of clinical. We'll be hearing their stories and tips and hope this inspires you to pursue unique career paths. So today is the 14th episode of the podcast, and I'd like to introduce my guest, Brianne McVeigh. Brianne, can you say hi to the audience?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being a guest. So I wanted to share a little bit about Brianne's background before we get started. So Brianne McVeigh is a registered dietitian, project management professional, and learning experience designer who specializes in health education. Throughout her career, she has successfully developed and implemented innovative programs that have garnered recognition and success in school and health sectors. Her passion for collaboration, knowledge sharing, and evolving her skill set has led her to be a speaker at industry events, preceptor and mentor for emerging health professionals, and her recent fellowship at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto. Brianne has leveraged her dietetic competencies and health background in a variety of unique ways throughout her career. She's currently the Senior Manager of Digital Health and Learning at Heart and Stroke, a member of the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance, and co-chair of the Community and Public Health Nutrition Network with Dietitians of Canada. In these roles, she works to better understand the challenges and opportunities in Canada's health landscape and implications for patients, health professionals, and populations. Employing a learner and patient-centric approach and digitally enabled strategies, Brianne strives to develop strategic and impactful programming that interests, engages, educates, and empowers people in ways that can drive enhanced professional practice, behavior change, and health impact. Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump in today. I'm super excited to be talking to you. I like to start out with kind of a fun question. What's your favorite like health and wellness trend or, practice at the moment?
Well, that's a good question. I'd say there's probably two things that really capture my interest these days. And the first one, which you might, as I said, I work in digital health, but the whole area of digital health is really interesting. It's
Mm,
growing and it's evolving, and it touches so many areas of health. So it's really broad. Digital health can include everything from virtual care and electronic health records to augmented and virtual reality experiences for training. Um,
mhm,
and one of the things I think is really neat is the digital health app and wearable space. Um,
mhm.
and that probably connects the closest to what I do. Um, Digital health tools and apps deliver personalized health information directly to individuals. And so they can play a role in promoting behavior change and sort of empowering individuals to have a little bit more control. And then on the health professional side, it gives us a new channel to communicate through, and also for our clients to track and be able to share relevant information back with us and their healthcare team. So I would say digital health is sort of one space that I'm finding really, really interesting right now.
Awesome.
And
Okay.
another one, I mean, it's hard to talk about anything these days without talking about AI,
Yeah.
you know? And so I do look at AI for ways to make work more efficient. So it helps, me work through some of the day-to-day stuff. Um, and in particular to unlock writer's block. So
Mm.
we've all been in that space where we're stuck with the blank screen and aren't sure where to start. And I'm sort of looking at AI tools in ways to help unstick that and to feed things back to me and help me unlock my thinking and organize my thoughts. So those would be
Yeah.
two things I think that are in my area and also a place of interest right now.
Yeah, I love that one about using it for writer's block. I find it really helpful for just like, getting some ideas on paper and getting a first draft going.
Yeah, I had a speaker in a class I took, and they talked about AI like a parrot that, feeds things back to you. Um,
Mhm.
and that sometimes that's exactly what I need. And especially working now by yourself in your home office a lot, where you don't
Mhm.
have a lot of people around to do that for you, using an AI tool can help you see or hear your thoughts and your writing in a different way and sort of refine it as you go. So it's an interesting tool.
Yeah, that's super smart. Yeah, I'd love to hear about your career journey if you can walk us through a little bit about that.
Sure. So I started way back, I won't date myself, in a nutritional science program, and began to cross-pollinate that education with applied nutrition courses. And then I completed a Master of Science and then a clinical internship, and went on to become a registered dietitian. And so what I will say is I started my journey in what I really thought would be a clinical and research focused path, as many of us do. But I realized pretty early on that my passion extended beyond the clinical space.
Mm.
And so, what I really loved and what motivated me the most was that teaching and coaching side of dietetics. And again, as many people do, I had some different jobs for a while. You need some experience, you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
I put my sports background to use, and became a personal trainer. So did some one-on-one and group nutrition and fitness counseling. I did some sessional teaching at a college for a while and worked some summers at a diabetes camp. And all of those things kept circling this health promotion education space for me. And then probably the two most important roles of my career were the first, where I spent a good portion of my career in a small but very mighty team of dietitians at Dairy Farmers of Canada with a program called Teach Nutrition. And we focused on health education and promotion in a school environment.
Mm.
And we got to create some really cool things.
Sounds
So,
interesting.
yeah, I mean, we developed resources and programs, but everything from activity sheets to comics to videos to songs. I worked
Mm.
on e-learning courses and training workshops and newsletters and websites. And so I would say that, I spent it over a decade there, and it really, because of the variety and the different things I got to do, it helped me kind of figure out who I was and to try
Hmm.
a lot of things, be exposed to a lot of things, and to develop those transferable skills. And that led me to where I am now, which is at Heart and Stroke, which has also been really amazing. I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about the health charity space, which is a
Hmm.
little bit different from certainly the school sector. And I've been able to take on a number of roles and work on some really interesting projects there as well. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Heart and Stroke, it's a leading nonprofit organization dedicated to preventing heart disease and stroke, and optimizing care and recovery. And when I first joined, I was really blown away by all that the organization undertakes. And
Hmm.
we think about things like research and advocacy and public education. But there's a whole other side to the business. So the marketing and the
Hmm.
philanthropy, the fundraising, the training products, so the CPR training and first aid
Yeah.
training for health professionals.
Hmm.
So it's a really interesting place to be right now, where I get
Yeah.
to work on some really interesting things. Um, and one thing in particular, one of the portfolios that I managed was dedicated to engaging and supporting people with lived experience of heart conditions and stroke. Um,
Mm.
and what I'll say is that role really changed me for the better.
Mm.
It was a lot of listening and learning, and helping to uncover opportunities for people to share their experiences and their voices to inspire others, and to help us do better. And so that sort of like played a large role into the types of work I do now.
Very
Um,
neat.
yeah, and currently, as the senior manager of digital health and learning, I'm really get to be involved in designing and implementing and consulting on learning initiatives, um,
Mm.
and innovative programs. And I'll give you an example. We just launched a new and exciting CPR education program, and it's called Cardiac Crash.
Ooh.
And I've also been working recently on an initiative to help women in Canada learn about their unique risk factors for
Hmm.
cardiovascular disease. And so there's been some interesting things there. Um, and working on programs with partners for digital health apps, for example.
Yeah,
So
that's so neat.
yeah, so I guess all that to say, I've sort of had this journey that has been routed in education and developing tools and resources.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I add that to the volunteer work I do, with Dietitians of Canada and the Canadian Women's Heart Health Alliance, I think I can honestly say I'm really happy where my journey has taken me. It's sort of been
Yeah.
very connected but diverse,
Hmm.
and I've really been able to kind of find an interesting path that's been really positive for me. And I
Yeah.
hope that you listening, many of you listening, are able to do that for yourselves as well. It's a good place to be.
Yeah. So super interesting. I loved hearing about some of those projects you have on the go, like the CPR and just like kind of innovation and working on different apps to help people in that space. I think that's really like there's such a interesting future with digital health, and it's really cool that you get to be at the forefront of working on programs with that. Awesome.
Yeah. And the way people want to receive information is changing,
Hmm.
and the way we need to communicate that information is changing. And so this space lets us innovate a little bit and try different things. So it's a great place to be.
Absolutely. That's cool. Um, so yeah, I like to talk about transferable skills. I'd love to hear in your view, like what are some of the transferable skills you've kind of carried through your career?
Yeah, and I think there's been a number of them, right? And so part of the transferable skills are also those pivotal things that really have shaped where I've gone with my career, and then helped me define what of those skills were the most important. So the first one I'll talk about is communication skills.
Hmm.
So especially when it comes to the ability to convey complex information
Yeah.
in a way that's clear, that's compelling, and that feels really relevant to the audience.
Hmm.
Communication skills are really, really important. And they're at the center of so much of what I do.
Hmm.
And when you think about writing web articles or developing program materials or social media posts,
Yeah.
speaking at conferences, right? There's so much that involves communication. Um, and even from a business perspective, a lot of your listeners are thinking about those business skills and the way that we write emails,
Hmm.
or the way we summarize things in a PowerPoint deck to share with leadership.
Yeah.
All of that is really grounded in those communication skills.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, like just kind of thinking about how do you tailor that to all those different audiences. Like that can be a challenge to kind of hone in and build on that skill for sure.
No, absolutely. But I mean, health professionals are grounded in communication skills, and we use them all
Absolutely.
the time. So I think those are really transferable. And the second would say would be problem solving.
Hmm.
Health professionals, I think, are natural problem solvers. So
Absolutely.
it's from the way we're trained, our experiences, certainly within the healthcare system.
Hmm.
We often work in dynamic environments with diverse clients, with multidisciplinary teams, and a lot of opinions and challenges.
Hmm.
And so thinking about how we apply those skills, um, everything from how we triage and prioritize things, we
Hmm.
analyze data and identify patterns and create tailored solutions for clients that we work with. So problem solving would probably be another one. I would say is really has been important to me.
Yeah. I think that one's
A
interesting too,
third,
because we take that evidence-backed like evaluation and mindset to solving those problems. So I think that can be a really valuable piece that health professionals can bring to the table when it comes to solving different problems.
yeah, that you know what? I'm going to actually speak about that because I think that's really, really key.
Hmm.
Evidence-based practice and the way that we're trained and the way that we use evidence as health professionals. And I'm not sure I would define it that way in a job interview per se, but what I
Hmm.
mean is that it's that ability to seek out, to understand, and to apply research, data, and best practices to our work. Um,
Hmm.
that whole, grounding in an evidence-based approach that informs decision making, and it helps us to optimize and assess effectiveness of our strategies and programs. So you're right, that problem solving evidence-based practice skill set is like so important and can help unlock so many things in different environments.
Absolutely.
And maybe another one that's worth mentioning is project management.
Yeah, we were
Um,
chatting about
you
that
know,
before we started today.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like as we think about problem solving and applying that evidence-based practice, we're often doing projects.
Hmm.
Um, and whether that's for your own business or working in other organizations or business or healthcare opportunities, you're working through the process of coordinating things,
Hmm.
and taking them from start to finish. And so I pursued my professional project management certification, and did get my PMP, and I found that to be quite useful. But just project management skills in general are really applicable to a lot of different workspaces and opportunities.
Yeah, and I think we were talking earlier about how that can come naturally to health professionals. If we think about some of our clinical background and training, where you have a particular patient and you need to coordinate care with like an interdisciplinary team and other professionals, and that has a lot of similarities to project management in more of like a business setting. So yeah, I think that one is super transferable. So thanks for sharing a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's doable, right? Like it's
Hmm.
there's courses available on, through universities, through colleges, through some of those mass online course platforms like Coursera or
Yeah.
Udemy. So, training in project management with things like, LinkedIn Learning and some of those things is really accessible.
Hmm.
Um, and, yeah, things is hard, when you think about the tests and the exams we have to go through as health professionals through our
Yeah.
certification. I wouldn't let the project management side of things scare you by any means.
Yeah,
It's
for
it's really
sure.
useful and applicable.
It's so practical, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
awesome.
And then
Yeah.
maybe like if we think about, I love that you asked about the competencies. Um, and I'll tell you why. So I work obviously in this health and learning space.
Hmm.
And because of my close ties with the learning and development sector, which tends to sit under HR function in a lot of
Yes.
organizations, I get some really interesting reads in my inbox and my feed.
Hmm.
And one thing I keep hearing about is this shift from a more role-based job economy to a more skill-based one.
Hmm. Yeah, tell me
Um,
more.
yeah, what I mean is that employers are starting to be more interested in what you can do, um,
Yes.
as opposed to your job title or job description of specific roles that you've had.
Hmm.
And so the emphasis is really on those people who have adaptable and transferable skills and competencies.
Hmm.
Those who can learn and innovate and pivot to meet
Hmm.
dynamic needs and demands at work. And so I would just sort of encourage the audience to think about things a little bit differently. So, what are your skills and competencies and experiences? And think about how you can describe and showcase those
Hmm.
and provide others with insight on how you might apply those in different contexts. I think that's really where the money is right now as you start to explore new and different places and ways to work, is that like skills based economy and what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we get hung up on job descriptions, like, and worrying that we don't have that exact experience. But when you start looking at what skills do you need for this role, that's where, it can be really useful to start creating like a bank of experiences and things that happen in your career. Because sometimes we forget, quite
Yeah.
frankly, like even just like an open document, a Google Doc or a note on your phone where you can just like super easily plunk, those experiences that are really cool in your day-to-day work, because that can be really valuable when you go to start if you're looking for a new role or new opportunity and you want to kind of be ready for your interviews and be more confident in writing cover letters and things like that. I think having that kind of bank can be super handy for you.
That's such a great idea. And what
Yeah.
about also not only the bank of things you've done, but sometimes we get those thank you emails or we get those
Yes.
little expressions like those kudos that show up in your inbox
Hmm.
or on your feeds. And sometimes the way other people see you or describe you or the things that they um, find interesting about you, those are hints to you of those skills and competencies that you might want to explore or showcase with
Yeah, I love that
colleagues
one.
as
And
well.
actually, in one of my previous roles, I used to have a folder on my email called Great Feedback. And it was exactly for that because a lot of that came in through email, client customer feedback. And I would just keep it there. And anytime, like even when I was having kind of a bad day, I would open a few, and it just instantly changes your mood. But it can also be really useful for like your next opportunity. So yeah, those are kind of like some simple hacks to kind of keep that top of mind.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for bringing that
Yeah.
up.
Can you talk a little bit about your networking, kind of both internally and externally within your industry?
Sure. I think for me, sometimes networking is quite purposeful, but sometimes
Mhm.
it's really informal and ad hoc.
Yeah.
Um, I think we need to also acknowledge it's very different in this post-COVID world,
Yes.
where we're often, behind a screen and, meetings go right to the last minute, and there's not a lot of that mingling and
Yeah.
networking time built into your average day.
Hmm.
And so for me, there's probably a few things that have allowed me to network over the last few years. Um, the one is the courses I'm taking. And you mentioned I did go back to school to take some courses at University of Toronto, and pursue a fellowship. And the classmates and the people that I got to work with were really amazing and interesting people.
Hmm.
And they all worked in different places and different sectors and had different roles. And so the network that I created through those courses has become really important, and really helped expand my view of what's out there. Um, and then the
Yeah.
second one is more traditional, I would say, like attending things, like showing
Hmm.
up.
Yeah.
you know,
It's an effort these
it's so
days.
easy. Yeah. Especially if you've got kids at home and you've got work commitments
Hmm.
and all of these things, it's really easy with the virtual options to opt out of
Yeah.
going. And so I do my best to not,
Yeah.
to choose the in-person event option when I can,
Hmm.
to show up at in-person meetings. If there are networking events, so you mentioned the project management, so they have chapters in a lot of different
Mm.
cities, and you can go to their events. Networking events through your professional networks,
Yeah.
through at conferences. So just show up, be there. Um, something my organization does, Heart and Stroke, has monthly coffee chats. And if
Mm.
you're interested, you get put in this pool and you get paired up with anyone within the
Oh,
organization.
cool. That's
Um,
neat.
yeah, and so that's been really good for me, to meet new people and also just learn about
Hmm.
different areas of the business and what people do.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
there's a lot of value like in that internal networking, especially when you're in like a larger, organization of just like trying to really get to know people in cross-functional areas that aren't in your unit because you can get pretty insular if you're not careful. But I think it gives you that broader appreciation for all the things your company does. And it also helps with like your understanding of the business model and the business priorities and, different like priorities your company would have. But yeah, I think you made a lot of
yeah.
great points there. So much value in the in-person, and, trying to make that extra effort these days to get out to events. I completely agree.
Yeah, and then I taught, I shared where my organization offers that
Mhm.
that as a connector, but I think we can do that ourselves, right?
Yeah,
You can
absolutely.
follow, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's
Mhm.
through, meet someone and then actually have a follow-up. So
Yeah.
let's book a coffee chat. Let's, meet up
Hmm.
for a walk. Let's, carve out 15 minutes to chat.
Hmm.
And sometimes not for a specific purpose, just to learn about what they do and to open
Yeah.
your eyes about what's possible. I love that.
Yeah. I love the walk and talk. I do
Yeah.
that with a lot of former colleagues and people that I want to keep in touch with. And like we just get on our phones and walk and talk. And I think, when we're on virtual meetings all day, it can be a nice break from staring at a screen. And if you already know the person, like, have a nice phone chat the old fashioned way and catch up and kind of network that way. I think that can be really valuable as well.
Yeah, no videos. It's
Yeah.
liberating to just have a phone
Absolutely.
conversation
Yeah,
without a video
occasionally
call.
if it's raining, I might end up folding laundry on my walk and talk, but hey, it's all good.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that the maybe just for the audience here, I think maybe when we're thinking about networking,
yeah.
the one thing that I have realized is that just being open
Hmm.
when people reach out to me
Yes.
is like game changing.
Yeah.
So, often people reach out via LinkedIn, or,
Hmm.
a friend of mine who works in an organization will ask me to speak to one of their students or a colleague or a friend of theirs. Um,
Hmm.
and I try to always make time for that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and I think like it comes around, right? Like
Hmm.
people like to help other people. They like to talk about what they do, especially if they're passionate about it. That's why I'm
Yeah.
here today, right?
Yeah, no, we
Um,
appreciate that.
and so I think like if I can encourage, the listeners out there, if you are open when people reach out to you, And then
Mm-hmm.
you're not afraid to ask or be open about, you know, requesting some time with other people's to learn and to network, I think you'll
Mm-hmm.
find that it goes a long way. That whole pay it forward mentality is really powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel very similarly to you about that. I think there's a ton of value in just being open and you know, you got to find times to fit it in, of course, when you're busy, but there's lots of opportunities, whether it is that walk and talk or, you know, if you have to commute, like schedule it on your commute. Like those are some of the strategies I employed when I was commuting on a regular basis that kind of helped just connect with more people. So that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
So what did you find you needed to learn like kind of the most about when you maybe went from, you know, the early clinical aspects of your role to kind of where you're working today?
I think the one thing is that, you know, even though my roles evolved and things have shifted, I actually use my science and health background every day,
Mm,
and in different ways. And so that speaks back to the competencies that we talked about, where
yeah.
it still is a grounding. And so that was really, really helpful. Um, but there's a few areas that I felt I needed to be a little bit more purposeful about learning, and
Mm-hmm.
making an effort to understand and to practice. One was business skills,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
business plans, how you price things,
Mm-hmm.
um, what it means to make things scalable and sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
The business skill side, certainly for me, has made me more effective in the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing skills,
Yes, marketing. That's
right?
a big one.
Marketing's a big one,
Yeah.
and especially digital marketing and writing space.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the word out about what you do?
Yeah.
How do you find your voice as an individual
Mm-hmm.
or as a business?
Mm-hmm.
So those digital marketing and marketing tactics and frameworks and tool sets were
Mm-hmm.
really something that I wanted to learn about. And a third might be partnership knowledge.
Mm.
Um, we can't do everything ourselves. You know, I know
No.
we try, but
Yeah.
partnership just unlocks so many opportunities and it connects people. And so in healthcare, sometimes our definition of partnerships is quite constrained. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what I've learned is that it can come in many forms, you know, and it can really unlock a lot of possibilities. So understanding the types of partnerships and the strategies for developing them,
Mm-hmm.
and making them strong and beneficial, those were really good areas of learning when I
Yeah.
stepped a little bit further from the traditional science role.
Actually, it's funny. I see quite a lot of opportunities in the partnership space. So I think
Mhm.
there are jobs out there in with a lot of health companies that are looking for people to kind of hone in on partnerships. So I think that is a great one to kind of understand and dig into a little bit further. So I'm glad you brought that one up.
Yeah, and
Um,
maybe the most critical, like elephant in the room area that I
yeah,
needed to learn, I would say, is about real life.
yeah. Oh,
Real
okay.
life.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to science, our guidelines,
Hmm.
science, like they're clear, they're straightforward, they're, you know, very directive. Um, but life is really messy,
Hmm.
right?
Yes,
Life is messy.
absolutely.
Um, and as healthcare professionals, we really want the clients to do what we need them to do to live a healthy, active life,
Yeah.
or what they need to do. Um, and I think we feel a lot of pressure,
Hmm.
and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do the same.
Hmm.
And it's not easy. It's not.
No,
No,
absolutely not.
environments, life phases, like all of the things vying for people's attention and focus,
Hmm.
they play a role. And so
Yeah.
I think that's something I really needed to kind of grow into and appreciate and
Hmm.
internalize as
Hmm.
my career went on. And
Hmm.
so I try to embed that lens of that empathy, um,
Yeah.
for myself and to be kind to myself and also to those that I'm working with.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
great.
the real life was definitely something that I needed to add to my you know, foundation of science and health knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think even in some of my own experience with like customer centricity and kind of working on design thinking and some of those principles, like really at the core of it, it's like the empathy for people's lived experiences and exposure to all the different lived experiences out there of people and how that can impact their health and kind of thinking of unique strategies to empower them to take charge and, look for opportunities. So yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
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 So what do you love most about what you currently do?
Oh, I love lots of things.
Yeah, we can definitely tell that. That's amazing.
I know. I get really excited about the work I do. I just think it's so great. And so maybe I'll share first the things that kind of shaped why I like what I do, and then talk
Yeah.
a little bit about more specifics. The first is variety,
Mm,
right? Um, I get to work on a variety of things, and I have through many of my roles in my career, and to be innovative. Um,
hmm
and that variety means different approaches and processes and collaborators. So I get to be exposed to a lot, and I get to continue to learn and grow and be challenged. So that's like a really good foundational element. The second is like a multi-pronged approach.
mm,
And so what I mean by that is in the work that we do, sometimes you're focused on a person or a group when it comes to health. But when you truly want to have impact, it's also important to empower those around them and that support
hmm
them. So family members or healthcare providers.
mm,
And so I love that kind of dual approach
hmm
for both the individual and then the people that surround and support them.
hmm
And then in a nonprofit world, you tend to have smallish teams. And
hmm
so it's not uncommon to have to wear a lot of hats,
Yeah, for
do a lot
sure.
of things,
Yeah.
right? I think you have the luxury in some large organizations to hone into a very small area, but certainly in my experience, there's been a lot of like dive in and just
hmm
make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
And with that, there's been some discomfort, right? You gotta like learn
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but what I learned was that I had a knack for technology and
Mm,
education. I had an interest in
hmm
technology and education. And I've been really fortunate to have some great managers and leaders who gave me a nudge and an
mm,
opportunity to grow my skills. So I will
hmm
be forever grateful to them to kind of shifting me down this path, um,
hmm
and really finding things that I love about my work.
mm,
And Heart and Stroke and specifically, I think the three things that I really love um, is that it connects to health impact.
hmm
So the work I do has a path to making a difference.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's really important. It's,
Yes.
specific health related outcomes. And I feel like the work and the projects that I do in some small way help things be better in that space.
hmm
And I work with a lot of people who feel the same way. So there's sort of this
mm,
energy that comes with that health impact connection. The learning experience design. So I've honed this niche into this like learning experience design and innovation and learning space, and I love it, and it keeps changing. Right? There's new tools,
hmm
there's new channels, there's new types of work. So that keeps me really motivated and interested. And then just the thought leadership and connection.
mm.
So in case you haven't noticed, I like to talk to people. I like to talk, I
Yeah.
like to talk about things. I get excited. Um,
hmm
and so that's part of my job.
It's
You know, I,
awesome.
I get to ask questions and work with different people. And I often feel really inspired to think out of the box and do things a bit differently or to do
hmm
things better in some ways. And so, those are all really good aspects of my job and my career.
Yeah.
And I
I
love that you
really,
asked that question. I
I,
love that you ask it because it's a good prompt to check in with
yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you said about the impact piece. I think as health professionals, that is really important to many of us, that what
Mhm.
we're doing, you kind of have to keep an eye on that and take a step back and look at it every once in a while and, you know, look for those opportunities to create impact and be part of something. I think we're naturally very drawn to that. And then the other thing that you said in that answer was really around like the value in working maybe in a smaller company, having done both, like I've worked in a very large company, I've had my own business, and it's amazing what you learn when you have less resources sometimes. You don't have an IT team or a marketing team. You can kind of learn a lot of new skills, but you
Mhm.
really have to be open to that. And it can be hard. Like we have to push ourselves sometimes, I think, in some of those spaces. And I think there's a ton of value when you do.
Yeah, and knowing when, it's the discomfort's good discomfort and when you
Yeah,
just need to call in help, right? Um,
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Not to say that you should try to do everything, but I think it is valuable to, yeah, give it a go and, look at what resources are out there to help you with it because there's tons.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
And
So
that
are there
speaks to those
any,
transferable skills, right? Those
absolutely, yeah.
competencies and transferable skills. Yeah.
Are there any areas that you're working on in your own development right now?
I think over the last few years, I've spent a little bit more time sort of on sort of formal learning for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And two examples were that I took some time to update and hone my facilitation skills,
Okay,
specifically around how to facilitate workshops to help teams with
great.
strategies or solving problems or figuring out how to prioritize and what action steps they can take. Um, and then I also, completed a fellowship in learning experience design because I wanted to just hone in and spend time to get that dedicated inquiry time and work through different challenges with expertise beside me. And so that
Mm-hmm.
was really great. And to be honest, I sort of completed that over the last year or two. And right now, instead of learning more, it's about applying the learning.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
How do I try it out and try the frameworks and tips I've picked up?
Mm-hmm.
Test things, figure out what works and what doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I would say where I'm at these days.
I think that's really important though, and we often think we always have to be in a course or taking more learning. And I think there's so much value in pausing after a learning experience and, even checking in with yourself on a quarterly or monthly basis after taking something like, going back and saying like, what did I learn? How am I applying it? Because you can get overloaded if you just keep, absorbing more and more courses and information. So that's a really great point. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I again, I just think it's so important. It's easy to get sucked into what I call the vortex of learning, right? And
Yes.
more certificates, more LinkedIn courses,
Yeah,
more
for
I
sure.
gotta like prove I can do it. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not that I don't think that's important. I'm a strong advocate for lifelong learning, but
Hmm.
the practice and implementation piece, as you said,
Yeah.
that's how you retain and grow and add your context.
Hmm.
And it's how you get your confidence
Yeah.
what you're
Absolutely.
learning,
Yeah.
right?
No, that's great. If there's one thing you could share with your sort of early career self, so you when you started out, what would that be?
Hmm. That's a hard one. I think what I would tell myself is that it's okay not to fit in a traditional
Mm-hmm.
box of career. Um, even where I work now, part of what I love about it is that I work with different teams and I kind of float around and get to
Mm-hmm.
work on different things. So, telling my early self that that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There certainly is pressure, especially early on, to brand yourself as something and get yourself into a
Mm-hmm.
very defined lane. And there's vulnerability in taking a different path.
Mm-hmm.
There's vulnerability, but it can be really rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe an expanded definition of what health professionals and in particular dietitians are and the types
Mm-hmm.
of roles we can hold, like it can only make us better and stronger as a profession. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I would tell
agree.
myself that it's okay to not fit and to kind of create your own career.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. Do you have any advice for our listeners who are kind of interested in maybe looking for something outside of a clinical traditional role?
Yeah, it's always an exciting time, right? When you start to think about what's next and where do I go
Hmm.
and what do I want to be when I grow up. I have
Yeah,
that conversation with myself every day.
absolutely. We all do.
So there's probably three things that if I could leave everyone with today, I would. And the first one is to do some self-reflection and exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So is there something you have a natural knack for? What type of work or activities do you find interesting and motivating?
Hmm.
And where is there opportunities? and whether that's in the job market or opportunities to learn or opportunities to network. But that time to self-reflect and think about you and yourself and what you're good at and what you want is really, really important as you start to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
that's great.
the
I think
second
you
thing
can
is, oh,
find,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go.
I was going to say, I think you can find ways of doing that even in traditional settings too, right? Like sometimes we get stuck that we have to have all these unique experiences right out of the gate. And I personally found like I had some pretty traditional roles early on, and it's there's opportunities even within those roles to explore your passions and lean into different projects, and gain new experiences like leading groups and trying creating resources and different things that you can kind of dig into to see like within any setting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can advocate for things or suggest
Yeah.
things, create a business case, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you take that self-reflection time and not only for yourself, but for maybe your roles or your teams,
Hmm.
great things can happen.
Yeah. You had one
So the
other one.
second thing, yeah, no, the second thing, this is to have gumption.
Mm,
And gumption is a great word. It's a
I love
really
that
great word.
word.
If you look it up, the first definition that pops up is spirited initiative and resourcefulness.
Mm,
So spirited initiative and resourcefulness. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
yeah. Sounds great.
Right? So have gumption. So get out there, explore, ask questions, connect with people. So that would be the
Hmm.
second thing that I would suggest. And the
Mm,
third thing that I'd like to leave you with, and I think we've talked about it a lot today, is to believe in your value.
hmm.
Leaning into those skills and those competencies and those experiences. They are valuable and they are transferable and they can take you to a lot of places. So
Yeah, for
take
sure.
time for reflection, have gumption, and believe in
Hmm.
your value. Those would kind of be my three takeaways.
Oh, those are great ones. I love the gumption. I'm going to keep that one top of mind. It's a great word. You're right. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share today?
Nothing in specific. I feel like we've talked about a lot today,
Yeah.
but I'm certainly open. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm, as I've said today, very open to talking and sharing and exploring with different people. So please feel free, any of the listeners out there, or Alexis, if you have any questions or things you want me to
Yeah.
expand on, feel free to reach out anytime. And hopefully I've
Awesome.
provided a few insights and suggestions that people find helpful.
Oh yeah, I think we've had lots of great nuggets today. So yeah, I'll do my wrap up. But yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed hearing from Brianne and you're feeling inspired. If you do want to engage more with the community, we have a free Facebook and LinkedIn group, Business Skills for Health Professionals Community, and I can link those in the show notes. I also have two ways to help you as a health professional. If you're wanting to make a career transition to something new, we have the Beyond Clinical Career Transition Program. And if you are a health professional already working outside of clinical and you're looking for a place to network, we have a membership program that recently launched. And I'll link both of these in the show notes below. So yeah, that's it for me. So thank you again so much, Brianne. And yeah, we'll
Thank you
sign off
so much for
now.
having me. Yeah, I really, really appreciate it, and I hope to stay connected and to listen to more podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.